Hello, my name is Teal Dunlap, and I've been a lifelong friend of Stephen's from high school through college and then all throughout life after that period of time. And Susan was kind enough to ask me to give me the honor of hosting the ceremony today. I kind of struggled with MC or Master of Ceremonies or something of that nature, so I'll just go with hosting. And we really appreciate your attendance today. On behalf of Susan and the family, they want to thank you all very much. We have people that are local that are attending. We have people that have traveled from far to attend. And we also have a number of folks online that are attending today as well. And today's meant to be a celebration and a memorial of Stephen's life. As you will hear today, it was packed with achievements and rewarding aspects of life that even though Stephen's life was cut short by ALS, the legacy and the memories that he has created are going to live on through different generations and different lives that he's touched. And so today, we want to celebrate those things and memorialize those things. Stephen left very detailed instructions for today. And so we want to make sure that we are honoring those instructions. And so as you see, though, Susan put great effort and time into setting up the memorial in front of us. You'll have a chance to come up and view that. So please do take that time, and then we'll have a reception afterwards at the end of the service today. And as we get started, I want to introduce Richard, who is the co-author of the book that Stephen wrote. And we want to make sure that that Richard Paul and his award-winning independent radio documentary. He's also the Smithsonian Institution's Verbal Fellow in Space History. And he co-wrote Stephen's book. And he's got a lot of different things to share in the eulogy today. We're going to go through that in just a moment. And then we're going to have a video montage. Then we'll follow that up with an open mic. So some of you may want to come up and speak a few different words during the course of the ceremony. Then we're going to go through a video clip that is set up. We'll have a poem reading and a prayer reading, and then we'll close that up. So as you're going through this, and maybe during the video montage, if you want to come up and say a few words, you know, that would be a time to maybe think about what you want to come up and say. You don't have to have prepared remarks. It can be about feelings or emotions that you want to share, the impact that Steve may have had on your life. Also, if you would forgive me, every once in a while, you may hear me refer to him as Moss. He was Moss to me and my group of friends. He was also Mr. Moss to his students, and then Stephen to many of you as well. And as part of what Susan has put together here, it represents different phases of Stephen's life. So both as a son, a brother, a teacher, an author, and a friend. And so as we think about what we're about to cover during the course of the rest of the afternoon, you know, all of you may have a different impact or aspect of that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Richard Paul to go through Stephen's eulogy.
Thank you, Teal. What do we, the living, owe to the dead? Well, if the person was your friend, and if he was your collaborator on one of the most important projects of your career, we owe them a lot. One principal thing I think we owe them is a recognition of what their life meant to us. I owe Stephen that, a public recognition of just what his life meant to me. And that is why I am so glad that he had the chutzpah to ask me, while he was still alive, to write his eulogy. I am glad, but I'm not going to lie, I am a little bit scared. There's an ancient prayer that we Jews have heard for 3,000 years or so. It comes when the leader of a congregation gets up to talk directly to God in public. It's written in Aramaic, but there's a translation of it that speaks to this very moment for me. It says, "Here I am, even though I am hardly worthy of the task. Please accept what I have to say as if it came from someone good looking, someone blessed with a pleasant voice and a pleasant temper, someone beloved by his fellow man." It's how I feel today. I didn't know Stephen as well as most of you, but I think it's fair to say that, like all of you, Stephen Moss left me a multitude of gifts. That's what I want to recognize here publicly. Here are the gifts that he left in my case. He taught me patience. He taught me to slow down. And really important, he taught me that strength comes from facing reality. I grew up around people who went to Yale Law and the Wharton School of Finance, and an upbringing like that creates expectations about how to live and what to want and how to strive. In fact, it taught me to strive. One of the gifts that Stephen gave me, knowing him and going through the experience that we went through together, Stephen taught me a totally different way to live my life. Before I met Stephen, I believed that you never worked with other people. Other people just got in the way of your vision. If it hadn't have been for Stephen Moss, I might have stayed that way forever. You talk about gifts. I met Stephen right after I got a $1 million grant from the National Science Foundation to create the project that resulted in our book. It hadn't been that long since I had come to terms with the realization that the way I had been brought up was a mistake, and with the idea that collaboration was vital. It was Stephen who taught me how to put this new way of being into practice. Now, I mentioned patience. Here is something to remember. We all know that Stephen was the first historian ever to recognize a connection between the space program and civil rights. But he had to wait 20 years before anything happened to his research. He learned the things that he learned, he wrote them down, he sent them off to NASA. NASA made a bound copy of it, and then they put it on a shelf for 20 years. Little side note about how Stephen and I first came to know each other. In 2006, I was at a NASA conference listening to a talk by the chief historian of the Pentagon. He was talking about how we need to broaden our vision when we think about who historians study in space history. Near the end, he was listing the sources that people should read, and he mentioned Stephen Moss's excellent master's thesis on NASA's implementation of federal civil rights policy. I heard that and I ran across the auditorium to the conference organizer, NASA's chief historian, Roger Lanius. I grabbed his arm. "Roger, you have to find me that Stephen Moss paper. That's the most amazing thing I ever heard of." And he did. And I read it at the Jiffy Lube that weekend. Best 2 hours I ever spent at a Jiffy Lube. Now, again, it was 12 years between when Stephen wrote his paper and when that historian mentioned it, and another 4 years before my documentary came out featuring Stephen, and then 5 years after that before we started doing interviews on TV and on NPR. During all that time, unlike me, Stephen was not out there constantly striving, constantly pestering people to notice him. That wasn't Stephen. What Stephen did instead was what he's always done. He focused on his family and he focused on his students. Because Stephen's father was in the military, the family moved around a lot. All through grade school, Stephen was the new kid at school every year. Now, we all know that he made friends easily, and a lot of people who I talk to in writing this eulogy think that that might be why. It might also be why Teal, you've all met Teal, it's why Teal describes Stephen as fearless. There's something else about growing up that way. Stephen's friend Ed Youngblood told me that it has the potential to really build family connections, because no matter where you are, your family are the people who you come back to. That's why I think Stephen and Susan were so close. He always looked out for her best interests. And you also know that Stephen devoted most of his adult life to taking care of his mother. And now to the students. We all have a teacher who changed our lives. And what I learned in putting together this eulogy is just how many people in Lubbock, for whom, how many people in Lubbock, Stephen Moss was that teacher. Brian Grass is one remarkable example. Stephen was his substitute teacher in history class one year. And let me reemphasize that. Stephen was his substitute teacher. He taught Brian for a week. Brian said, during those 5 to 7 classes, I learned that somebody like me could amount to more than just being the weird kid in class whose jokes nobody understood or laughed at. He said, during our class discussions, Mr. Moss would praise my insight, he laughed at my jokes, and he made jokes of his own that were multi-leveled and smart. He was so much smarter than all my other teachers. And for those handful of classes, I thought that he was there for me and nobody else. In high school, Brian said there was a time when he was having a rough patch mentally. And although Stephen wasn't one of Brian's teachers that year, Brian said, Mr. Moss always made time available to me, even if it was just to listen to me talk after school about Star Trek. He did that for a lot of kids. Teal told me about someone who got up at the pre-mortem party that they had for Stephen at Texas Tech. Teal said this student spoke about Stephen being her safe space, her trusted person. That's because Stephen knew how to keep a secret. He did it for that student. He did it for Brian Grass. And in both of those cases, I'm going to keep that secret here, but I will tell you that both of them were really, really important. The day that Stephen did that for Brian was the day that he said, I learned that I could trust a teacher. Later on in life, Brian said that he learned the meaning of the word mensch. And when he did, it was always Mr. Moss that he thought of. And Brian is not the only one. Stephen's Menschlichkeit is well known. And I think it's at the heart of his lifelong devotion to social justice. Stanita Clark runs the Employee Multicultural Coalition at General Dynamics Mission Systems in Massachusetts. Stephen and I did a talk about our book there in February. She wrote me the other day that Stephen's persistence, empathy, and legacy live on through his work, which they certainly do. But Miss Clark only knows one side of that work. She knows Stephen's pioneering research on the link between civil rights and the space program. She doesn't know the other half. That other half stretches all the way back. He always tried to champion the underdog, champion people who are marginalized, Teal said to me. And that really came out when Stephen was teaching at Lubbock High School. I heard from Jason Pena. He had Stephen for homeroom and for economics. Jason called himself a barrio kid from Arnett Benson in Lubbock. He said in the 1970s and 80s, Lubbock was a quick lesson that life was just never going to be fair and that he was always working from a deficit. He said that his teachers in elementary school made it clear that they despised being on our part of town. And he said that even though they were right down the street from Texas Tech, his teachers never offered any discussion about college dreams. That changed when Jason met Stephen Moss. I recall being in your homeroom and in your economics class, he said. These were the first instances in good old Lubbock where I had a teacher who was white, but actually cared to get to know me and to talk about the future. While Jason admits he can't remember anything he learned in economics, he said that Stephen did teach him valuable lessons on how to treat people and how to play chess. He said, "You're a good man, Stephen. Like my Arnett Benson homeboys in your homeroom would say, that's one cool-ass huevo." They probably would have also told you, now that they're grown, that Stephen was patient. Another gift from Stephen, he taught me to slow down. If you look up the word laconic in the dictionary, there is a picture of Stephen Moss. I didn't know a lot of people from Texas. I thought that stuff was all made up. No, that was Stephen. After Sony Pictures Television bought the rights to our book, our big shot Hollywood lawyer told us that Stephen and I had to make all of our decisions together. I would call Stephen constantly because that was my way. Should we ask? Should we ask? Should we ask them what's going on? And there'd be this long, slow pause. I came to think of it as the Moss pause. And then I'd hear, "No." Another long pause. "Richard, if they had something to say, they'd say it." That was Stephen's gift to me. And now in my head, it's Stephen. No, just wait. It'll come. And it does. Or sometimes it doesn't. And that is Stephen's other gift to me. After Hidden Figures came out, it crushed us like the asteroid that crushed the dinosaurs. We had been the #1 African-American history book on Amazon for 7 months. But after that movie came out, no one wanted to talk to us. Now, I was inconsolable for months. And again, it was Stephen whose example got me by. Because losing a movie deal was not the worst thing that ever happened to Stephen. Stephen had cancer twice. Stephen loved Texas Tech, as we all know, but his childhood friend Stephen Ford said Texas Tech University was not his #1 choice. Stephen Moss and Stephen Ford, in school, they were known as Laurel and Hardy, they were actually supposed to go off together to College Station, 400 miles away from home. For Moss, the reason was simple. Stephen wanted to get out of Lubbock, Stephen Ford told me. But then his father got cancer. He didn't want to leave his mother alone. So Moss stayed in a place where he knew that his view of the world was just not accepted. He didn't fit into Lubbock, Stephen Ford said. He just wanted to go someplace different. And for decades, he never did. He spent year after year caring for his mother. Teal said that moving her to Waco was extremely rare and selfless. He also said it changed the course of Stephen's life. Stephen never married. He never had a family, and he wanted that. Stephen never had the career that he dreamed of. Ed Youngblood said, "I've watched him deal with a lot over the years. The struggle professionally, I know, was difficult, but it was always so impressive that he was able to go, okay, this is what I'm doing. How do I make it work so that I'm actually doing what I want to be able to do?" Ed was also a military brat, and he said, there's a renegotiation strategy that you learn. One of the things that can come out of this is, well, I'm moving again. There's acceptance that you kind of have to have. Acceptance. Seeing what you have, knowing it's what you have, and accepting it. Making the best. Stephen was making the best all the way to the end. He told Stephen Ford that because of the morphine that they gave him in hospice, to get to the other side, I won't have to go through a dark and lonely place. And it was even more than that. Ed Youngblood said the idea that you would have pre-mortem parties, I mean, it's beautiful. He said it's a gift for him to be able to get to see people, but it's also a gift for them to have that reconnection that you would have at a funeral, but being able to appreciate it with the person that you're honoring. There it is again. It's a gift. Stephen, the teacher. Stephen, the historian of civil rights. Stephen, the brother. Stephen, the son. Stephen, the friend. Stephen gave the world so many gifts, even up to the end. So many of you saw him and talked to him while he was still able to talk. Ed Youngblood put it best when he said that no one is going to have to walk away from this memorial service saying, gee, I wish I had said this, or I wish I had said that to Stephen. That was one more gift that he gave us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That was beautiful. Thank you. So you got to experience there in a small taste, and you've all experienced it personally yourself, but then kind of encapsulated what Stephen is, what Stephen means to all of us. And now we'd like to move to a video montage of Stephen's students, and we'll take a moment to pause while those go through the screen. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Moss.
Hi, Mr. Moss.
Hi, Mr. Moss.
Hey, Mr. Moss.
Hi, Mr. Moss.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moss. This is Jason, we're class of 93.
It's hard to capture what you mean to me in just a few minutes.
It's been a long time, but I remember you very fondly.
You were different than all the other teachers.
You are one of three great teachers, and between Mr. Moss, Miss Phillips, and Miss Duncan, made my whole high school career.
You've really touched a lot of lives, and of course it's not just with your teaching.
You made me feel like I belonged.
I realize, looking back, that you saw something in me that I had yet to see in myself.
You seemed to take a genuine interest in us as students.
And I just always loved that you were a little weird, like we were.
I loved that your response to LISD issuing a rule that there could be no secret societies was to start Loyal Order of Toad Ranchers.
I remember that you showed us the documentary by Michael Moore, and that was the first time I had been exposed to activism in that format, and it really lit a fire inside of me that needed to be lit.
You've had such a meaningful impact on so many lives.
You're just a great person, and the world needs more people like you.
You were persistent and gentle in your encouragement, and your kindness was unfailing.
And just how you always kept people together.
Into this world where it was cool to be curious.
And above all that, I just love that you loved us.
You were always teaching us to be skeptical and not cynical. You taught me to ask questions and to dig for evidence and to think critically. And that wasn't just a lesson for the class that you taught, that was a lesson for life. That's something I used every day.
So I just wanted to tell you that you're important, and I'm sure you've helped and touched thousands of students by now.
And your legacy is so strong and woven into the history of so many students' lives who you've touched. You made a difference, Mr. Moss. You really did, and for that I am eternally grateful.
No matter what life throws at you or the universe throws at you, you've had such a meaningful impact on so many lives. You have an army of supporters out there. You're not alone. We will always have your back.
Wishing you love and peace.
I love you. I am thankful to have known you for, coming up on 40 years.
So thank you for that beautiful montage of student reflections, and you can see the impact that Stephen's had on lives. And in my opening remarks, one of the things that I said is that Stephen's leaving a lasting impact on this earth. It's not just in the terms of legacy of children and prodigy and things like that, progeny. It is because he has shared what it means to truly be human, caring, being compassionate, caring for your neighbors, treating others as you would like to be treated, and impacting people, imparting people with critical thinking. And so now I'd like to move to an open mic session. And we'll kick that off with Ariella Baker Archer, and she will come up and share some thoughts. And then after that, any of you in the crowd, in the audience, are welcome to come up and share any thoughts. Ariella, the stage is yours.
My name is Ariella Archer. I was a student in Stephen's economics class at Lubbock High the 1991-92 school year. I wasn't one of the lucky ones that was able to keep in contact with Stephen over the past 30 years. In all honesty, I didn't even know that was an option back then. My reconnection with Stephen happened on February 23rd of this year. I happened to be going through some pictures, and I remembered a story post on Instagram that asked you to post yourself at 17. I came across a picture of me and Mr. Moss at my graduation. A flood of memories came over me, and I decided to post it and write about why he was the most important teacher that I had ever had. The post read, "Yesterday, I posted this picture to my stories when I came across a story that asked you to post a picture of you at 17. I thought I would share it here as well. The person I am with is Mr. Moss. He was my economics teacher my senior year of high school. He was one of my favorite teachers for so many reasons. He was a great teacher, but bigger than that, he was invested in his students, wanting them to succeed. Those of you that had me as a teacher are well aware that I hated school, especially high school. Early on in my sophomore year, things began to get really bad for me, not by my choice, but in my lap, and things never really got better. Enter Mr. Moss, my senior year. Mr. Moss not only stood up in front of class and taught, he took the time to get to know me, knew many of the struggles I had, and he became a safe person for me. I was always allowed to go to him and talk, get advice, and just sit in his presence if I needed to be away from people. He believed in me, and he told me so many times. He was honest with me as well. No matter what was going on, he supported me, even my crappy decisions, and was still honest but kind. I even think at points he worried, not just about me, but about the students that needed it most. When I became a teacher, I wanted to be just like him. I don't know if I was ever just like him, but I did my best. This picture of us at graduation means a lot to me. He knew that inside the envelope I was holding, there was no diploma. I was allowed to walk the stage, but I did not officially graduate until July. I could not pass Algebra 1, so I took it in summer school. I did not talk about the fact I was not allowed to graduate on time because it was so embarrassing to me. But he knew, and he was still very proud of me. I am so thankful to him and other teachers like him. Who knew that I'd end up where I am today? Wherever he is, I know he'd be extremely proud of me. About 5 minutes later, a friend of mine, Monica, tagged Stephen in the post. I had no idea he was on Instagram. Another 5 to 10 minutes passed, and Mr. Moss said hi to me in the comments. Then he sent me a private message. He told me he was still proud of me, and the tears just started rolling down my face. That meant everything to me. We spent days catching up. I was able to watch his C-SPAN interviews, read his book, and I was able to update him on how things were going in my life. In May, I got a message from him asking for my address. I sent it to him, and a few weeks later, I received a box in the mail. The moment I opened it, I knew exactly what it was. It was the same shirt he was wearing in the graduation picture I posted on Instagram, and it is the same shirt that I am wearing at the moment. There was a note included, and in part of it, he said, "I hope you recognize this shirt. Yes, it is the very one in your graduation picture. It has been a favorite of mine for over 30 years, and I can't imagine it having a better home. Wear it well." He signed the letter and drew the same picture of himself with the glasses and the mustache. If you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Me and Stephen became more than just student and teacher in the short time I was able to connect with him. We became fast friends. I have been honored and privileged to tell this story twice at 2 celebrations Stephen had in Lubbock. At the second celebration, everyone in the room was able to stand and tell Stephen how important he was to them. He impacted each and every person in the room. In a very individualized and personal way. It was such a beautiful testimony to one of the most amazing people I've ever met. For me, his legacy has always been a part of my own teaching. I taught 8th grade U.S. history for 18 years in the classroom. Each year, when I taught about supply and demand, I always shared the story of the lesson we did in Stephen's economics class my senior year, where we played musical chairs to learn about supply and demand. I never lost an opportunity to tell my students about him, his class, and how wonderful he was. At Stephen's second celebration, where we shared the impact he had on us, the event was videoed, and the testimonies of all of Stephen's friends and former students made it to Facebook. The next day, one of my former 8th grade students messaged me on Instagram. She just so happened to work with Rachel, the person who organized Stephen's celebration with his former students. She told me she saw the video, and then she wrote this to me. "Hey, so my coworker Rachel showed me the reception you went to on Saturday honoring Mr. Moss. It was such an amazing thing, and I saw the video of the story you told, and I will happily say that you were honoring him so well. You were more than just my history teacher. You were my first teacher I had in Lubbock when I moved, and I was a girl who was loud and misunderstood, and you taught me to love everything quirky about me, and I just wanted to say you are continuing his legacy every day, and I'm so blessed you were my teacher." This got me thinking, if we are sharing the wisdom, treating others with the kindness he gave to us, and sharing the life lessons we learned from Stephen, then his legacy and the profound impact he had on us is growing exponentially. Maybe one day one of my former students will become a teacher and share with their students something I did that I learned from Mr. Moss. Maybe there will eventually be a 6th generation Mr. Moss student, and wouldn't that be such a wonderful way to honor him and his legacy? I will part with this. I was able to visit Mr. Moss a couple of weeks before his passing and spend some quality time with him and his sister Susan. They gifted me a book that Stephen loved that was a book full of quotes published in 1938. One of the pages had been marked with a Post-it note, but he nor Susan could remember why the specific page was marked. I have read over that particular page many times already, wondering what might have been the reason Stephen found this particular page so interesting. There is one quote that sticks out to me as maybe one he might want to remember or reference again, and it makes me giggle each time I read it. It goes, "Life isn't all about beer or Skittles, but beer and Skittles, or something better of the same sort, must form a good part of every Englishman's education." The quote highlights that fun, alongside with serious learning, is essential to having a well-rounded, robust life. I could not agree more. We will miss you, Stephen. With love, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Ariel. Does anyone else want to come up and share a memory of Stephen?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Warren Taylor, and I've had the great honor of knowing Steve since junior high school. And I call him Steve. Our other friend, Stephen Ford, to me was always Stephen, and Steve Moss was always Steve. To me, anyway, that's how I called him. But anyway, it's been amazing to hear all the students and the other people that he's worked with over the years, Mr. Paul. And the students we heard before back in October at our gathering, it's so amazing. It doesn't surprise me at all, but it's been really neat to hear the impact that he had on people's lives. And I've known him for years, and I said, I've been able to call him friend. I've known him, and I've known his love and care for us. And I appreciate so much over the years having known him, and kind of went separate ways, after college. But we've been able to get together the last several years, and it's been really great when we get together. But I've always known that he was my friend and that I could count on him. I knew whatever was going on, that I knew that Steve Moss was my friend, and that meant a lot to me over the years. And it's been really important. We miss him, look forward to seeing him again down the road soon. And anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you to his family, Susan and the family. In high school, we'd go over there every once in a while, and your mom and dad always made us feel like part of the family right at home and welcome us into the home. And it was always, he just was a good friend and family too. So thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Looks like Fred wants to come up and say some things as well. So just a moment.
Put a clock on me, please. I'm Fred Bowers. I've known Steve, it's hard not to say Moss. I've known Moss for 50 years, almost to the day. I remember our first conversation. I remember our last conversation. How many people can you say that about? I've got to keep this short. You give a lawyer a microphone and it can get ugly. I need to, one thing I'll always be appreciative to Moss about is he not only united a small group of us, but he reunited a small group of us, the poker group. That's this picture over here at the Tech Stadium pretty recently, October 1st. And Moss always had a vision for whatever he was focused on. It can be as little thing as taking a pie to the face because our homeroom class didn't raise quite as much money as Joe Revere's, or setting up the poker group, or something like that. Moss was genuine. If he was on your side, he stayed on your side. He loved to teach. He loved being a teacher. I remember in 9th grade history, here I am going down memory lane, when we finally got to Napoleon. He was like a kid at Christmas. He couldn't wait he didn't have to learn about Napoleon. He knew everything, and he couldn't wait to be tested on Napoleon. For example. But I'm going to conclude with this. Hope I can do it. You guys, we're going to keep meeting. And Stephen Ford is unable to be with us today. But I particularly want to call out Ford and Teal for being there for Stephen in recent months. It demonstrated, really, for us, the love that we have for Moss. And I want to say that Greg and Warren and Teal and Ford, we're going to keep getting together. We're going to tell the same stories over and over. And we're going to do it in a circle of love and not be afraid to say, I love you, Greg. I love you, Teal. I love you, Warren. And I love you, Ford. And that is part of Steve Moss's legacy. Thank you.
Love you too, Fred. All right. Any other open mic? Yes, sir.
I'm Cliff Blanchard. I'm also a friend from high school. I had been a Lubbock boy, but my parents moved away. And when I moved back at our sophomore year of high school, Steve was one of the first people I met that I didn't know from grade school. And his mother and my mother worked together at the Lubbock State School. And so we had that in common, but we found out that we were both weird and nerds and into D&D, and a group of us got together, a different group from the poker group, and we played D&D regularly. I'm the last one of us left. Pat Easter, James Groves, and Steve and I played D&D at least twice a month for years. I do recall one time we were playing a game and it went 2.5 days. And when I got home, my mother was so livid and was like, "Where have you been?" And I called June Moss, and she doesn't know where Stephen is either. And I was like, well, we were playing D&D. The last time I got together with Stephen was on the occasion of James Groves' 60th birthday. James died in college. He fell from his dorm room and died. And the two of us got together. I came up and stayed with Stephen for the weekend, and we drove over to East Texas to drink a beer with James at his graveside. And the love that I have for Steve, and I call him Steve also, it's a different Stephen that I knew. Stephen Skybell was my Stephen, and Steve Moss was just Steve. So, but we drank a beer with James, and remembered Patrick, and the four of us were there together. And even though they're gone, they're always right there.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Cliff. That was beautiful. Thank you. Does anyone else have a story they'd like to share? We have another one. Yeah, come on up. Oh, we've got two. All right. That's great. Love the reflections. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shauna Martin Molina. I was one of Mr. Moss's students. I didn't prepare anything, but I did write a Facebook post about him about a week or two after his celebration of life. I'd like to read it to you. In November 2011, I was looking through old photos and keepsakes when I found a newspaper clipping of a poem I'd written as a youngster. It was about making mud pies with my great-grandmother when I was little. Touched by the nostalgia, I snapped a picture of it and posted it on Facebook. Fast forward to December of that year, I invited Mr. Moss to my annual birthday party in Austin. If anyone brought a gift to one of these parties, it was typically an unwrapped bottle of wine or liquor to share with the guests. However, Mr. Moss showed up with a proper wrapped package. Under the wrapping paper was one of the most thoughtful gifts I'd ever received, a mud pie kit, complete with a spoon, small mixing bowl, pie tins, a bottle of water, and decorative rocks, and dirt from Lubbock and his current city of residence, Waco, no less. Taped inside the lid of the box was a printout of my mud pie poem. The box sat inside my closet for many years, not packed away, but in plain sight. I hadn't made any mud pies with the kit, but every time I saw it, I thought of Mr. Moss and our long friendship. After Mr. Moss was diagnosed with ALS, I decided it was time to dust off the kit and make some mud pies in his honor. My son, who's 8, and I made pies. I told him about his great-great-grandmother and the teacher-turned-friend who gave me the supplies we were using to make the pies. Although more than 14 years had passed since Mr. Moss had given me that box, his thoughtfulness still echoed across time, bridging past and present in more ways than one.
I'm Damon Hilliard. I've known Moss for 49 years. I met him in 10th grade at Coronado High School. We were on the journalism staff together. I did photography and Steve did the writing. And so we'd get assignments and go out together. And I think there's one word that we haven't heard about Moss, and that's courageous. And he was courageous. He drugged me down to Central Texas to a camp to work there for the summer. And this guy couldn't swim. And he has a swimming pool in his backyard now. And he waded out into water that was neck deep. Of course, I'm out there swimming and drinking beer, and he's out there this deep, and I'm like, Moss, what are you doing? And he's like, well, as long as I can touch the bottom. And I think that was one thing that he left with me, was to be courageous. And that's part of the legacy that he's left. And like so many others, he's Steve, or he's Stephen, or he's Moss. In our family, I have 2 daughters, and Steve would come up to Dallas-Fort Worth area and stay with us, and we would go to a ball game, or we'd go out to eat, or whatever it was, Thanksgiving time, or we would go down to his house, and we would swim in his swimming pool, and he'd walk around in the pool, neck deep. And so our daughters, because my sister married a man whose name was Steve, and my wife has an older brother, and his name is Steve. Whenever we said Steve in our family, it was difficult for us to figure out who we were talking about. So he became Uncle Steve Moss. And so he was talking with one of our daughters, and he said, well, you don't have to call me Uncle Steve Moss every time. And she said, no, I do, so that way we know who we're talking about. So to our courageous Uncle Steve Moss, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, David. Good to see you. Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon. My name's Danny Holward. I met Mr. Moss, and he invited me over the years to call him Stephen, but you can take the boy out of Lubbock, but not Lubbock out of the boy. And every adult I met when I was a kid is still Mr. or Mrs. I met Mr. Moss when I was 11 years old. He was an assistant scoutmaster in Troop 157 in Lubbock, Texas. And then I later had the chance to have him as a teacher in high school. What I always have really loved about Mr. Moss, in addition to the way that he loved us and his students and showed that to people around him, he really had probably one of the healthiest senses of mischief of anyone I've ever known. And he gave me a piece of advice one time. This was when I was a student in high school, and came to him. I don't even remember what the source of the argument was I'd had with my dad, but I wanted to quit Scouts. And I came to Mr. Moss and was talking with him about that. And it was very important to my father that I finish my Eagle Scout and get that, and I just didn't care at that point. And Mr. Moss said to me, well, you can get mad, and that's a choice. You can quit, and that's a choice. Or you can find the game. Find what makes it fun to you. It doesn't have to be on your dad's terms. Do it for you. Find what makes it fun for you. Find the game. And I love that approach, because when you've heard several people talk about, he looked out for the underdog and the little guy, and it was important to him to stand up for people who needed that. And you can get mad and you can get ugly, and that's a choice. But he was never unkind, and I can't think of a time that he was, because that wasn't him either. He wanted you to find the game and to find the joy in that experience. I'm now Scoutmaster of a troop, and I've tried to pass that on to my boys in the troop, and I've sometimes had the same thought that Arbella shared of, if I can take this thing that was given to me and give it to other people and hope that they pass it on, that's something powerful that he gave to all of us. And I just am very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have something that they'd like to share? Okay, looks like we have a couple more.
Hi, I'm Audrey Salinas, class of '94. Had him for economics as well. And it's really funny that you all have your names for him. He's still Mr. Moss 30 years later. And he will always be Mr. Moss. His class was probably the only class I remember speaking up in and speaking out in, because it was safe. I am a teacher, and he would leave some encouraging words for me on Facebook. That's how we've kept in touch. I found my Toad Ranchers card with a note from him. He sent me a coffee mug, and in the note, he's like, I know it's not the right year. You graduated in '94 and it says '93, but I know you would appreciate having this memento, and I do. And as teachers, you get 500 million cups. There's a coffee cup for everything. But that's one that stays with me and has traveled with me. and moves with me. And it is even more precious now. So, as a teacher, I definitely hope that I am continuing his legacy. Thank you.
My name is Samira Mendiera. I know him for a long time, and I would like to share a verse of the Bible that I was reading today with my daughter. It's Proverbs 15:23. People take joy. I'm sorry. I told my daughter I don't want to talk, but she said, and insist to come because, like everybody say, he was a very good person. Say Proverbs 15:23. People take joy in giving an appropriate answer and find a timely word to be very good. And he was very good in giving advice, because sometimes I come to the house and I say, Steve, my daughter's name is Italia. She always gives me a lot of problems. And I always come and say, Steve, Italia. And he says, Samira, take it easy. Don't worry about it. She's a girl. I know that. And I say, Steve, why you never got married? I said, I never have a time. Are you think so, or do you never find the right person? I say, with Susan, I don't think any woman is perfect. And I say, okay, Steve. And I always was with a lot of problems. Every time I go to his house, and I ask him for advice, and he always give me the best he can. Even in the last minute that I know he was struggling to talk, I always go to his house. And sometimes I don't want to even talk or ask or do something or say something. But he say, now what happens, Samira? And I say, it's because you can imagine my son now will have another baby. He cannot even support himself, Steve. And he said, but now you had 2 grandbabies. And I said, that's the problem. I'm too young to smell like diapers. Oh, Samira, you will still love your kids. And I said, yes, I know. And a very good friend of mine, he was from Germany. He speaks very well English, and I spent a lot of time with him. And by the time I come with Steve, I was talking with him a little bit more fluent in English. And I stopped probably for 2 years only speaking with a Mexican and Latinos. And one day Steve just come in and say, Samira, you kind of like strongly in English, right? Yeah, I know, Steve. I'm not talking English anymore, only when I come with you. And I said, you're the only customer I have that is inside the house. And he said, oh, my goodness, I cannot talk too much like you because you talk too fast. And sometimes I don't even understand, but I know what you mean. And I said, please, Steve, please. And then he said, that happened when you go with so many Latinos, Samira. And I said, yes, I know, but you know what? It's not just talking in Spanish. It's because my partner cannot speak very well English, so I cannot even practice with him. And he said, don't worry. Everything will be fluid in this life because life is good, Samira. And when he said that, and I see him struggling, I put myself there. My problem was nothing compared to what he was passing. And he always was talking about Susan, and Susan, I say, Steve, Susan sent me today here. And I say, yeah, I know, she told me you come. I say, so what do you want me to do? Do you need any help? He said, just put ice in my cup. And I say, just ice in your cup? He said, yes, just ice in my cup. And I say, something else, Steve? are you sure you only want ice in your cup? If it's not bad, you can go and pick my mail also. And I say, okay, something else? You would like to eat something? He say, I don't mind to have some tacos, but don't tell Susan. And I said, and what is wrong with Susan? It's because, she don't like everything together in the plate. So she really not like so many tacos. And I say, okay. And I say, you have a specific place that you want me to go? And he say, I like El Gallo. And I said, El Gallo? Yeah, it's over there close to George's restaurant in the very corner and the stop sign. And I said, okay, I can go over there. 7 minutes after, I said, man, you fly. I said, you sent me to bring tacos. So what do you want me to do? To stay over there eating before you eating? Of course no. I will bring you some first, and then we can eat together. And then by the time he over there, he say, Samira, do you come back tomorrow? I said, yes, I will. I said, why? Do you think you can bring something else for that same restaurant? I said, yes, of course. But I know how to say Susan anything, right? He said, please. And Susan always was worried about him and his food and everything that he wants. And everybody that was before me is right. He always was, even until the end, a very good person, very wise person, and he never was negative. And it's very nice for him to say that he wants to celebrate life today, because he never was negative in anything. Even that he was in a pain and struggling, he never complaining. He was a person to follow him, like she said, that she want to be like him, because he really give us, to everybody that spend time with him, he give us a lot of lessons to learn. The life is not used to have life and do stuff. If not have a life and mean it. And when you do it with love, passion, and never attack yourself and feel sorry for what you do. This is all I have to say. And I say that because my daddy told me to come and speak, and I'm a person that I always like to be in the back. And I don't like it because I know that I'm struggling in my English, and I hope everybody understands what I say today. But I promise something that I will do, and I always tell Steve, I will do whatever I have to do until the end. And I think today, it's not the end like the other person before me was saying. It's not the end today. It's something that I have to do for me, for my daughter that she is not here today, and I'm speaking for her. And saying greetings to Susan. And I don't say Mas, I say Steve.
That was amazing. Thank you. We understood very well. And Fred, I think I may have recovered from that shot to the heart you gave me a minute ago. So thank you. All right, anybody else? One more. Thank you.
Oh, this looks really high from back there. Hello. My name is Bushra. I came today for Stephen. He was my patient. He was my first ALS patient. I got to know him a little bit after his diagnosis, kind of when it was just getting diagnosed. That being said, I'm really glad that I came today because I think I learned a lot about his life and everyone he's impacted in the past few years, 30 plus for some, but for me, I think I only had a good 4 or 5 months with him, but they were one of the best 4 or 5 months that I've ever had. I wanted to share kind of what it was like after his diagnosis. He took the diagnosis really, really well. Before I met Susan, I met Stephen, and a lot of what he had said initially was out of pure courage and resilience. I remember the first day I walked in, I saw sticky notes all over his room, and I said, "You really like to be labeled." And he said, "No, that's my sister Susan. She labels everything." And I was like, I would really love to meet this woman. A couple of days later, we heard that Susan wanted to schedule a meeting with us, and I said, absolutely, would love to. A day prior, I just came and prepped Stephen with everything that I had thought was going to happen with his voice and speech and everything related. And Susan came in with a notebook, files, coordinated, ready to take notes on everything that we were saying. And she took everything so well and so seriously. And I like to think that all the anxiety that Stephen didn't have fell on you, Susan, because you were very, very worried for him, and he just had no care in the world. He took everything pretty well. I've never been so direct with a patient before, so doing that with him was something very eye-opening. It taught me a lot about resilience. It taught me a lot about courage, and it's taught me a lot about how I'm going to move forward. And it's the first time that I found a friend and a patient as well. So I know that regardless of how his stay was with us, I followed him after, and I think I will continue to follow him after. And the way that he's lived and that I've heard that he's lived feels very, very near to my heart and very special. And I haven't known him long enough, but I think I knew him through you guys today. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else would like to come up? Okay, I think we're then going to move to the next part of our program. And the Reverend Lynn Parks is going to come up and read a prayer for us.
Although I worked with Stephen at TSDC for a number of years, we moved in kind of different circles. He was in a different department. I wish I'd known him better. If you'll pray with me, please. Father in heaven, you have received your wonderful creation, Stephen Moss, into your presence, and we commend him to your mercy and love. For Susan and those other friends and family members who have gathered here to commemorate Stephen's life, we pray that you, God of all comfort, will provide comfort and rich abundance to them. Let us go forth from this place, having been cleansed of our sins and renewed in our faith and carrying your love to our world, always looking out for those around us who need comfort, need assistance, need teaching, need care, need love, as Stephen so often showed in his life. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Now we're going to show a video of a news story that ran in Lubbock shortly after the gathering that we had together. You heard of the two different memorial or pre-mortem ceremonies that we had. And one of the surprising or amazing things that was done during that time was one of the local news stations came out and interviewed Stephen. So we're going to take a moment to listen to that clip.
It's a lousy way to be mobile is true, because you realize in a very quick and very obvious manner you can't walk, you can't stand up, you don't have choices anymore.
A diagnosis that has taken over Stephen Moss's life. But this week his focus was on his trip back to Lubbock to say one final goodbye to the place he's cherished for so many years, all made possible by his hospice and caregivers.
We see a lot of sadness and a lot of heartbreak. And so when Waco Gentiva, as well as Homestead and Gentiva, reached out to us, we jumped at the opportunity to take care of another tech fan.
This particular situation has just been incredible. His
his joy and how thankful he is, and just the opportunity to be a part of this.
And this journey was not just about receiving care, it was about making memories in his favorite place.
I'm up there for a reason. For one time, one summer, I was given a chance to prove you can stand up to this.
Filled with his favorite people.
I really did pick some of the best people in the world to have in front of me.
Haley Hinojosa, KMAC News.
So that was a big trip. It took a lot of work, a lot of coordination, and Susan put in a great deal of time and effort around that, as well as Stephen Ford, to make that a reality for Stephen. And I know that he was extremely grateful for all of the people that could come out for that, but also those of you who may have commented about it on text messages to him or Facebook or other social media to connect with him around that. You know, one of the recurring themes that we're seeing throughout the ceremony today is Steve was a connector. He connected all of us in different ways with teaching, with being strong, with being encouraged, the lessons that he would pass on, the small gifts and tokens of appreciation and friendship. So he really reached various lives in so many different ways. And now we're going to have a poem from, it's Ulysses from Alfred Tennyson, and a lifelong friend of the family, Matt Orwig, is going to come up and read that poem for us.
What a beautiful outpouring today. I'm so touched by this and moved by this and inspired to do better. We should all hope to generate such love and to leave such a legacy. I know I've certainly fallen short of what I've heard today, but it's not too late. I've known the Moss family for about 55 years. Back in the days when we could walk to each other's house or ride our Stingray bicycles to each other's house. And the only instruction we had from our parents was come home when the streetlights come on. At first, I didn't really understand why I would be given the assignment of reading a section from Ulysses by Tennyson. I must confess I had never read Ulysses by Tennyson. And when I started reading it for the first time, I'll confess again, I struggled. It doesn't rhyme, the punctuation doesn't work right. But then I realized, I think Stephen left me one last gift and was educating me one more time, because that's his legacy as an educator, one of his legacies. And as I read through it, I understood why he was drawn to it, because it captures a heroic ideal, captures the constant pursuit of knowledge and learning, and the acceptance of mortality while persevering. As Tennyson said, some work of noble note may yet be done. So from Ulysses by Allison Tennyson. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off and sitting well in order, smite these sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the isles and see the great Achilles who we know. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in willed to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
Thank you, Matt. So as we close today, think about, and we carry Stephen with us, Moss with us, Mr. Moss, Steve with us, the son, the brother, the teacher, the author, the friend. And we reflect on his life and what he means to each one of us, and actually gives us a moment and an enduring opportunity to be together and stay connected. We're all connected in this world. We all have to get along and find that purpose, find that game that he preached to his students and to all of his friends and colleagues of what makes life worth living. How do we take the different circumstances that life throws to us and make that work in our different individual cases? Champion each other. Think about those who are not as privileged or as not as gifted as we might be, and be compassionate. But also, as we think about and adjourn out into the world, space was always something that Stephen thought about. He talked about it. History. So as we reflect on history and space and time, and at night when we go out and we look up at the stars, we can think about Stephen and what he means to us, and we'll always have that, and he'll always be with us. I think now we are going to have a little bit of a recession. We'll have people be able to come up and look at the setup here and think about that son, brother, teacher, author, and friend that Stephen was to all of us. And then we're going to break bread and have a meal together. And the meal was somewhat chosen by Stephen. He didn't want the normal, usual fare, the rubber chicken or things like that. So we have a selection of barbecue and Indian food to enjoy. And there are some mementos on the table. Feel free to take those with you as well. But on behalf of Susan and the family, thank you. Thank you all for your attendance today. Thank you for all your attendance online. Thank you. I think Russell's going to do it from the rear up to the front.
you.